BoDean 52, how are you folks? I'm here with the king, trying to get the train to show up so I can race it. Doesn't look like it's going to happen, but I got to tell you what, for a June day in Michigan, it's a little bit chilly. It's weird. I just got back from a trip, and it was 100 plus. And if you want to talk about coming in and riding hot, oh man, I'll tell you. Let's talk about heat and motorcycles. We have talked before about weather conditions and motorcycle riding. Just no question, it impacts a ton of things. Whether it's a little chilly and you have the windshield off, maybe you have the wrong gloves on, or you're riding and all of a sudden you find it's a thunderstorm, or sometimes even worse yet, it's 100 degrees. And that is what I found myself on my last motorcycle vacation. And I thought it was interesting and worth talking about because myself and my two buddies talked about what gear we were going to wear when we got on the motorcycle. Now, this is not a what gear should you wear when it's 40 degrees, 60 degrees, 100 degrees, all the time, all the gear. It's not what this is about. But it was so warm that we really had discussions about it. And they both gave me some pretty good tips that I thought were good. Now, I know that a lot of people already do this, but one of my friends will take a couple things of water and put them in the freezer and then carry them on the bike. I'm like, oh man, that is sweet. I did that and I'm like, oh my God, that was so helpful. We started to hydrate maybe an hour before we went on the ride, and that helped. And then I have a buddy that has one of those packs that he puts on the back of his bike, and he has a tube that comes over him when he drinks out of it, And he let us know multiple times when we didn't have water and he was drinking out of his, and how great it was, and he had water and hydration all day. But even with that, when there's three of you riding, I think it's helpful because you have buddies that are going, okay, hey, I'm starting to get a little hot, or we've been riding for an hour, and maybe we should take a little hydration break, even if it's stopping when you don't want to, or stopping for 15 minutes or 10 minutes. And on our vacation, we actually did that because we were riding some great, fantastic roads, but that also exerted some mental and physical twisty riding, right? And so we stopped multiple times, but it does get hot. We went from, in the spirit of transparency, wearing mesh jackets that I'm a fan of, which I wore a couple days, to wearing those sleeves that you had a short sleeve shirt on and you were wearing the sleeves that really protect you from the sun. Well, other than like this portion of my arm that looks pretty ridiculous. I wore those for a couple days. But I'll tell you what, it does make an impact on you. I think it was easier when I was riding with my three buddies because each one of us, I don't want to use the word forced to stop, but really forced to, hey, let's pull over and get some water, and I think it was helpful. But it was the ride home, I think, that really got me. So the days that we were riding, it was hot. A lot of the roads were tree-lined. It wasn't as cloudy. Now, I know that doesn't necessarily change the heat, but the sun. But it was tree-lined. I would say kind of like this is, maybe even a little bit more. And for some reason, it felt cool. You're like, wow, it's 96 out. They say it feels like 104, but it really feels pretty good. This is nice. I'm riding. I feel cool. It's not too bad. But then when we stopped, drank water, and got back on the bike, it was like, oh crap, I feel so much better. I didn't even know that I wasn't feeling good or that I needed a break, even though your mind goes, it's hot, and everybody's like, hey, be careful, and you're like, it's not that bad. Come on, we're riding. It's not that bad, but it was. So, fast forward to my trip home, where I'm doing 300 miles, of 270 of it is freeway, right? Interstate, whatever you want to call it. And I am just, and it's another hot day, not as hot, but it's 90, 92. And I hydrated up, and I am, I'm just kind of getting in the fast lane and, trying to get home within the speed limit, of course, plus a little bit. But, you're just kind of riding and listening to music, and you're like, it's hot. All right, and I did have my jacket on the ride home, this mesh jacket, which cools you down. I know there's a lot of things you can do with packs and vests and all that stuff, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But I found myself going, okay, it's 300 miles. I need to stop twice. All right, maybe 3 times because it's hot, but twice. I'm usually 100 to 120 miles is what I normally go. But I'm like, okay, it's hot, maybe every 100. Didn't have breakfast, so I knew I was going to want to stop, like an hour out or half hour out, and just grab something to eat and drink some more water. Well, of course, you get out there and you're like, wait, I don't want to stop until I'm at least 100. And then you realize that you're like, man, it's not that I'm hungry. I actually don't feel hungry, but it's like, man, something don't feel right. So all of a sudden I stop, have a little bit of breakfast, take a half hour, 20 minutes, whatever it was, get some more water, get something to eat. You come out and you're like, I'm a new man. And you just didn't even realize that it was bad. So get back on the bike and go another 120 miles or so, and you're like, oh, good, I'm 100 miles out from home. I can make it. And grab a little more break there, BoDean 52. And and I'm like, man, for some reason I'm all of a sudden extremely tired. And I'm like, man, I should stop. And then you go, no, I can just ride 60 more miles. I'll be all right. Shake it off. Turn the radio up. And I found myself going, man, I got to stop. So I stopped at this little rest stop and got some water. Actually, I got a Gatorade. I don't know about you guys, but water helps. But Gatorade, for some reason, peps me up, whether it's electrolytes or whatever in it that helps me. But I'm just like, man, this is really helpful. But I sat down kind of outside under the shade, up against a tree, believe it or not, and I'm just kind of sitting there and drinking and looking at my phone. And I get back on the bike, and it's like I just got up for the day to ride. And it just kind of made me think that, man, riding hot is dangerous. And but I think when you're in the middle of it, sometimes you're like, it's not that bad, when it probably is. And if you're with somebody else, you can kind of take care of each other. But when you're riding alone, sometimes you just gotta watch that heat. I'll tell you what, I would love to hear some stories from you about, heat, some suggestions from you. Maybe you go the next day. I mean, on our trip, we decided not to ride one morning because we were going to ride a long ride in the afternoon. So, but I'd love to hear your suggestions. What do you do to kind of keep it cool and to make sure that you're safe in hot conditions? Because that is something I think that can help all of us. So that is it for BoDean 52. Thank you for checking in. Make sure to take your Christmas ornaments down no later than January 15th. A public service announcement from BoDean 52 at A&W Root Beer. Not sponsored. Be safe, everybody. Check on a friend. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.